Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina, October 2018, 4:15 on a Monday afternoon, the third day of the trip. The light already thinking about going down because that's what October does in the southern Appalachians. There are three men at the camp, a 56-year-old father, his 28-year-old son, and his son's first cousin, Caleb, also late 20s, a Finnish carpenter from Asheville. They've been packing for about 2 hours. They have decided the camping trip is over. They haven't said why. They each have their own private reasons for why right now. The bags are still being tied and none of them are putting the reason into words. Caleb says he forgot a knife at the spring, and the spring is 200 yards up the trail. He's already moving to go get it when he says it. He doesn't want to be at this camp anymore. He walks up the trail. The father, let's call him Tom, and his son are tying up the last of the dry bags when they hear Caleb's boot walking on the leaves. The forest has been dead quiet for an hour and a half. No insects, no squirrels, no wind at the beach. Tom's son, who did 2 tours in the army, has his hands on his knife without remembering moving it there. Then they hear Caleb say very clearly, "What?" Just that, not a question, a statement. A voice you use when somebody has said something that doesn't make any sense. Then they hear something answer him in Tom's voice. Tom is standing at the camp. Tom has not spoken. The voice that answers Caleb from the trees is warm, familiar, smiling, even like it has been Tom for years. The father will tell us 4 years later that the part he can't get out of his head is that he didn't know what his own voice sounded like from the outside until that afternoon. And whatever was in those trees, it did. Andrew here for Permanent Underclass, where we explore the weird stuff your therapist would tell you to avoid, the "oh cool, now I'll never sleep again" side of reality. If you're easily scared, easily offended, or easily anything, you're in the wrong place. This is the last one. You've heard the others. Real quick recap. A mother in Tennessee, her daughter's voice from outside the tent. A bow hunter in Alberta, his brother was dead and he heard his voice in the trees. A Cherokee deer hunter in 1924, his wife's voice on a mountain she'd never been to. A trucker on Highway 16, his daughter's bedtime nickname through the door of the rig at 2:30 in the morning. A solo hiker on the Pacific Crest Trail, her partner's voice from a ridge 150 meters straight up. A fire lookout in Idaho, a child crying at the base of his tower, climbing his ladder, dropping the mask at the trapdoor. I can hear you breathing. Different forests, different decades, different voices. One rule that keeps getting bigger. It picks the voice you can't ignore. Familiarity is the door. Plausibility is the trap. That is the rule. Pisgah National Forest covers 500,000 acres of land in North Carolina-Tennessee border. Old country. The Cherokee were on this land for 10,000 years. The federal government made them leave in 1838. The Trail of Tears started up in these mountains. These are the stretches of Pisgah where the granite has not seen a human being in 80 years. Hunting parties I'm about to describe was 8 miles in from the nearest forest road. 8 miles of trail ridge between the camp, and anybody could hear a man scream from it. Tom is 65. 40 years bow hunting these mountains. He has hunted this exact drainage for 25 years, 250 separate nights, camped under the same hemlocks, give or take. He has never had so much as a black bear come through the trap. He sleeps with his tent flaps open in October because the air is good and the dark is clean. His son is 28, 2 tours. Doesn't spook. Wakes up at noise and goes back to sleep. The kind of guy who's trained himself to know what a threat is and what's just a noise. The third man is Caleb, late 20s, Finnish carpenter in Asheville, grew up in flat country. Been begging Tom for 2 years to take him to Pisgah. had never been to a backcountry camp before in his life. They got in on a Friday, set up before dark, and cooked on fire, talked, went to bed. Friday night was fine. Saturday night is when it started. 2 a.m. Saturday night. Tom is asleep in his tent. His son's 20 feet away. Caleb's tent is 40 feet away from the other side of the dead fire pit. The fire is out. The forest is doing what Appalachian October forest does at 2 a.m. A distant owl in the wind, beach creak in the gully. He wakes up because somebody is calling his name. Just one. Soft from outside the tent. Maybe 10 yards away in the trees. Tom, it says. He sits up. His scalp prickles up like electric current has gone through it, and he realizes, without remembering moving it, that his right hand is on the curkey he keeps next to his sleeping pad. His mouth has gone dry all the way, and it does dry when adrenaline beats your conscious brain to the punch. He can hear his own pulse in his ears. He listens, and he hears nothing. The voice was wrong. He doesn't know how to articulate the right shape, the right pitch, but there was no breathing behind the words. No air, like the sound had a name to it, but what had come out of the mouth did not need to inhale to make it. He thinks for a half second that it must have been a dream, and then he thinks for a half second it was Caleb, his son. Caleb is the only one in the camp who calls him Tom. His son says, Dad. His wife says, Tommy. But Caleb is in his tent, and Caleb has no reason to be saying his name softly from the trees at 2 a.m. Tom doesn't call back. He's a 40 years of hunting experience. You don't call into the woods in the dark. He stays awake. He lies on his side facing his tent flap with his hand on the curkey until the eastern sky starts going gray. In the morning, he asked Caleb if he was up at 2 a.m. Caleb says no. Slept through. Tom asks his son. Son says no. Slept through the whole night. Tom decides he was dreaming. He later said, years later after this, that he knew when he was asked the question that he wasn't dreaming. He just needed to hear them say no. He knew he wasn't dreaming. He needed to hear them say no so he could have permission to dismiss it for one more day. That is how this thing works on you. It gives you permission to stay one more night, and you give yourself permission to stay one more night at a time, and again and again. Sunday afternoon, Tom is scouting a ridge a mile east of the camp. He's alone, and he finds a deer, a young doe about 110 pounds. Recent kills, 12 hours, maybe less. Tom has dressed thousands of deer. He is professional, a man who can read an animal carcass. So when I tell you that what was wrong with this deer, I want you to take it seriously, because the man who found it absolutely knew what was wrong with this deer. The deer was drained, not eaten, not field dressed, not predator killed. Drained. The body cavity was intact. No bear scoring on the ribs, no coyote teeth marking the throat. No bird damage, even to the eyes, except the eyes weren't there. Both were gone. 2 clean, dark sockets. No surrounding tissue damage. No insect activity in the ocular orbits. Tom's exact words were, it was like somebody had cored them out with a melon baller. The mouth was open and the tongue was missing. He moved a leaf with his boot. The hide along the doe's whole left flank had been peeled back in a single piece, like a glove turned partly inside out and then put back where it had been. Underneath the hide, the muscle was punctured, not slashed, not torn. Punctured, multiple times. Small, clean holes, pencil thin, going down to the bone. There was no smell. October fresh kills in damp Appalachian woods usually smell. This one didn't. There were no flies on the body, no yellow jackets, no ants in the surrounding leaf litter. Nothing was coming for this deer. Tom covered the deer with leaves and he walked back to camp. He didn't tell his son, he didn't tell Caleb. He didn't say a word about it for the rest of the afternoon. He said very quietly because if he would have said anything, they would have all left, and he wanted to enjoy his time at the camp. He wanted out of the woods by Monday. He just didn't say so yet. Sunday night, same camp, same fire pit, same 3 men. This time, it doesn't wait till 2 in the morning. It starts at 11:30. Tom is awake in his tent, reading on his phone with headphones in. Brightness is down. He hears something through the headphones, which means whatever it was loud enough to bleed through the audiobook that he was listening to. He pulls his headphones out. It's Caleb's voice from outside the camp, calling Tom's name. Then Caleb's voice calling Tom's son's name. Then Caleb's voice calling itself, calling Caleb from somewhere out in the trees. The voice that sounds exactly like Caleb was in the woods and calling Caleb back to camp. Caleb is in his tent. Tom can hear Caleb breathing in his tent. The voice circles the camp. It uses Tom's son's name 3 times, Tom's name twice, Caleb's name once more. It moves clockwise around the perimeter of the clearing. Then it goes up. The voice comes from above the tent line, from the canopy, from somewhere 30 feet up in the woods, in the trees. Tom's son comes out of his tent, standing in the dark in his thermals and his boots, a knife in his right hand. They look at each other from across the dead fire pit. Neither one of them says anything. Tom looks past his son's shoulder into the trees, at the edge of where his eyes can resolve shapes against shadow. There's something tall standing in the brush line. It's taller than a man, and it's not moving. He cannot tell if it's a tree. He stares at it. His eyes start playing tricks. He stares some more. This isn't a tree. Trees don't stand 30 yards inside the bush line at the edge of a hunting camp at midnight, while a voice that sounds exactly like a man sleeping in his tent walks and circles around your perimeter, calling everyone by his name. Caleb sleeps through the entire thing. They check on him twice. He is breathing. His face has slack in it that doesn't look like normal sleep. He's been somewhere else. That's the first piece of evidence they have. Tom's son recorded part of it on his phone. About 40 seconds of audio. The voices are clear in the recording. The names are clear in the recording. 2 nights in, Monday morning, they wake up, they eat fast, and they start packing. By 2 p.m., they're almost done. Tom has not told his son or Caleb about the deer. Tom's son has not played the recording for Caleb. Caleb still doesn't know that something stood at the edge of camp Sunday night above the canopy line, calling his own name. Caleb says he forgot a knife at the spring. If you made it this far in the series, you already know the next rule in the paragraph that they're going to violate. But while we take a break, like this video and subscribe if you haven't to Permanent Underclass and TikTok at The Underclasser on X. Last one, then the rules. Here we go. Caleb walks up the trail towards a spring at 4:15 on Monday afternoon. The trail is 200 yards, mostly flat. Open hardwood country, no thick brush. From the camp, you can see almost the whole length of it through the trees, as if the trees are off, shifted, which in late October, they mostly are bare and a little shifted. Tom and his son watch Caleb walk up the trees until the trail bends. Then, they do not see him reach the spring. The bend for the spring is 150-yard mark. They stop hearing his boots. The forest goes all wrong at once. The owls that were calling at the ridge stop. The squirrels at the canopy stop. The wind dies. The pressure drops in Tom's ears like he has swallowed something coming down a mountain. They also hear Caleb say, very clearly, "What?" Then they hear something answer him in Tom's voice. Tom is standing at the camp. Tom hasn't spoken. The voice in the trees is using Tom's voice to talk to Caleb at the spring. Tom and his son drop the bags and they run. It takes 30 seconds to get to the bend. When they walk around the bend, the trail to the spring is empty. The spring is empty. There are Caleb boot prints in the soft mud at the edge of the spring, and there are no other prints, no drag marks, no sign of struggle, and no blood. There is a smell, sweet, hot, and wrong, like meat has been kept too warm for too long. Caleb is gone. They start calling for him. They yell for an hour, and they get answers. His voice answers from a ridge to the east, half a mile up, terrain he couldn't have crossed in 5 minutes, let alone 4 hours before it had been. His voice answers from the creek to the south, 200 meters down a steep grade. His voice answers from the trail behind them, and it answers from the camp. And then his voice answers from very, very close, maybe 20 feet into the laurel. It says, "I'm down here, help me." Underneath the words, there is a wet sound like he's drowning, like there's water in his lungs. At the edge of the laurel on this dry October path in the woods. Tom's son grabs his father's arm and does not let him take a single step towards. They go back to the camp. They pack the rest of their gear in 8 minutes. They hike 8 miles out in the dark with one headlamp and the lowest red setting and the other off entirely. They get cell signal at the trail line at midnight and they call 911. Search and rescue starts at sunrise Tuesday. They run a standard grid each area of the spring, then expand to 2 miles, then 5, nothing. Day 3, they bring in dogs. The dogs lose the scent of the spring and refuse to follow it past the bend. I'm going to repeat that because it is in the SAR report. The dogs would track Caleb to the spring. They would not track him past the spring. The handlers had to physically pull 2 dogs back off the trail. One of the dogs urinated on itself after being pulled past the trail. And that's also in the report. Day 6, a volunteer searcher finds the body. It's 15 miles from the camp. 15 miles through trailless country, across 2 ridge lines, up a granite outcrop that requires hands to climb. He is found at the top of that outcrop. Now I'm going to read you what's actually in the report. I want you to sit with this because none of it is exaggerated. None of it is for the effect. This is what the medical examiner in Buncombe County, North Carolina wrote in pen. He is wearing his underlayer. His outer layer is folded 20 feet from the body at the base of the outcrop. His boots are gone. His socks are gone. The soles of his feet are destroyed. Skin scraped to bone in places. The medical examiner found granite shards embedded in the meat of both heels. His fingernails are gone. Not chipped, gone. Torn off entirely. Both hands from climbing. His teeth, bark and small bones in his teeth. The bones are not human. They're squirrel. They're bird he had been chewing. His stomach was full of pine needles and drift, several pounds of it. He had been eating the forest. There are 5 marks on his neck, round, perfectly even spaced, like fingertips. The medical examiner notes that the pattern is consistent with a hand pressing, but the spacing is wrong, too wide, wider than any hand ever. The spread of the bruise pattern suggests fingers approximately 10 inches long. His eyes were open. The body was facing east, watching the sunrise. The pupils or rolled all the way back behind the upper eyelids, as if at the moment of death he was looking at something behind him. His tongue had been bitten through in 3 places. His hair had gone gray at the temples. He was 28 years old. 6 days his hair turned gray in 6 days. Cause of death is listed as cardiac arrest and secondary exposure. There was a handwritten note at the bottom of the coroner's report in pen, signed by the medical examiner, and it says, "I cannot in good conscience certify my findings. I am unable to determine what happened to this man." The medical examiner retired 3 months later. He has not given an interview about the case in 8 years since. There is no scenario in which Caleb walked 15 miles barefoot through November-October Appalachian cold backcountry, climbed a granite outcrop he had no equipment for, folded his outer layer at the base, ascended to the top in his bleeding socks, and then his bare feet flayed, lay down at the top of the outcrop facing east to watch the sun come up, chewed bark and squirrel bones, swallowed several pounds of pine needles and dirt, and died of cardiac arrest, with the pupils in his eyes rolled back all the way to look at something standing directly behind him. There's no scenario in which a human does that. That is what happened to him. That is what's in the SAR report, and that's what the coroner's report and the testimony of the 2 men in the camp. Tom's son, the kid who did 2 tours, the kid who doesn't spook, closed his eyes for a long time, and he thought about the day when he got that call. He says, we didn't lose him at the spring. We lost him before that. The spring was just where it took its body. So now you know why we don't repeat what it said. And there's one more part. 2 weeks after Caleb was buried, Tom went back to the camp, alone, to get a tarp and a kettle they had left tied up in a hemlock. He drove to the trailhead at first light. He hiked 8 miles in. He got the tarp, he got the kettle, he stood at the camp for about 5 minutes looking at it. Then he heard Caleb's voice from the trees. It said his name. It said, Tom, and it said it the way Caleb would have said it. It said it from about 40 yards out. Tom looked into the trees, and he saw something. He saw a tall figure standing inside the brush line, wearing what looked like Caleb's hunting jacket, Caleb's height, standing the way Caleb used to stand. Weight on the right leg, left hand at the hip. But it wasn't standing on the ground. It was about 1.5 feet off the ground. Caleb was in the cemetery in Asheville. Caleb had been in the ground for 9 days. The thing in Caleb's jacket saying Tom's name, and then said one of Caleb's old jokes. A specific one Caleb used to tell at family dinners, word for word. With Caleb's exact pause, Caleb's exact laugh at the punchline. Tom dropped the tarp, he dropped the kettle, and he ran. He doesn't remember the 8 miles back to the trailhead. He remembers vomiting in the parking lot of a Pilot truck stop 2 hours up the highway. A stranger asked if he was okay, and the stranger's voice sounded exactly like Caleb's for half a second. Tom got in his truck and drove the rest of the way home with the radio on as loud as it could go. That night, Tom heard his name from inside his bedroom window in Caleb's voice, from the rose garden he and his wife had been weeding the day before. Tom moved his family 6 months later. They now live in Central Florida. Tom has not been in the woods since, not been in any woods. He won't walk the green belt behind the subdivision after dark. 8 years. This thing still has Caleb's voice. The thing still has Tom's name. The thing still has not stopped wearing them. That's why we don't say its name out loud. That's why we don't repeat what it said. That's why we don't go looking. And that's why the old people who knew the rules. So here are the rules, written down for me, for you, for all of us, because nobody else is going to put them somewhere where you can find them at 3 a.m. the next time you need them. So you'd better remember. Memorize these. 1. You don't answer. Doesn't matter what it sounds like, doesn't matter how close it gets, doesn't matter what it says. Answering acknowledges. Acknowledging opens the door. 2. Don't ask it what it wants. It already knows what it wants. The question is the invitation. 3. Don't go looking. The thing wins the moment you step outside, the moment you leave the cabin, the moment you leave the tent, the moment you walk past the trap door. 4. Don't say its name out loud. Saying the name is feeding it. Saying the name is a small invitation. The thing collects invitation. 5. Don't repeat what it said. Repeating it gives it your voice on top of everybody else's voice. Your voice goes into the trees with the people that's already taken. That voice does not come back. 6. Don't go back. Once it has somebody's voice, the woods that took them are no longer human woods. They are in the woods forever. The ground belongs to the thing. You don't go back in it. You don't go back to that trap. You don't go back for a memory. You don't go to get back a tarp and a kettle that you needed. You walk away. You don't turn around. You don't go back. And that's it. That's the whole rule. That's everything the old people knew, distilled into the shortest version I can give you. If you've ever heard something out there and you knew that it was wrong and you didn't tell anybody, you already have known all of this. You knew it in your body and you knew it before you knew it in your head. You just needed somebody to tell you, to write it down, and now it is out there. So one last time, don't answer, don't ask, don't look, don't say it, don't repeat it, and don't go back. And stay out of the woods.